Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah. Nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna sayyidina Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu wa khatamu anbiya'i wa khiyaratu khalqihi wa habibuhu. Allahumma salli wa sallim alayhi wa salli ala alihi wa sahabatihi wa man walahum wa ihtada bi hadihim wa stanna bi sunnatihim wa da'a bi da'watihim ila yawmiddin. Allahumma ja'alna minhum. Amma ba'd. Ibadallah, usikum wa nafsi awalan bi taqwallah. Ittaqullaha subhanahu wa ta'ala la'allakum tuflihun. يقول سبحانه وتعالى في كتاب المجيد: يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولو على أنفسكم اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى إن الله خبير بما تعملون. ويقول في سورة النخرة: ولا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. صدق Allah wa sadaqa Rasulullah. Brothers and sisters, first of all, I praise Almighty Allah for His abundant blessings. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire us to turn to Him always in repentance, praising Him and thanking Him for His blessings, and always trying to use His blessings in ways that would bring us closer to Him so that we succeed in this life and the next life. I have recited a verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina lillah. O you believe, be witnesses steadfastly standing on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for truth and justice. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ. Let not your hatred of people towards people lead you to make unjust judgment, pronounce judgment that is unjust and unfair, to treat them unfairly. اعدلوا, be just in your judgment. هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى, that is closer to piety. And Allah reminds us, إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. Allah is aware of what we do. In another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us the ideal that we should aspire and look for is we should try to realize that the greatest of Islamic ideals, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ. Good and bad cannot be alike, cannot be equal. إِدْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ السَّيِّئَةِ. That which is evil, counter it with that which is best. If you do so, you will find your enemy becoming your bosom friend. So we promised today to talk about Islamophobia. You know, last week we got the good news that the government of Canada declared January 29th as a remembrance day, day of remembrance for the 2017 Quebec City mosque attack, which took the lives of more than 6 people and many rendered many as victims. And also government also followed it up with another, bill that was passed declaring the white supremacist groups as terrorists. These are all great initiatives on the part of our government. The Muslim organizations have worked hard for this, and it is the fruit of their efforts. Islamophobia is a real threat We are seeing it everywhere, various parts of the world. In India, we had hundreds of Muslims burned alive. And of course, the attacks against Muslims still going on in many parts of India, especially in North India. And we know how millions have been displaced in Myanmar, and thousands of Muslims in Sri Lanka also facing, discrimination, experiencing, the effects of Islamophobia, the hatred for Muslim, against Islam and Muslims. And of course, in New Zealand, so many, 51 people were killed in the two attacks on the mosque there, and injuring 49 people. And all of these, attacks were perpetrated by people who were brainwashed by Islamophobes. They are present everywhere in the social media, in the newspapers, in the magazines, in the art, music industry, everywhere, fiction, everywhere they are present, and they are spending millions to spread the hate propaganda, hatred against Islam and Muslims. It's racism. Of course, racism is rampant against black people. Racism against Jews, they call it anti-Semitism. Of course, this has been going on. Now, what do we Muslims, as Muslims, do? What does Islam teach us to face this hatred, this racism? Of course, the first thing we have to remember is Quranic mandate for us is to be witnesses for truth and justice in the world. Shahadatul Haqq, witnessing for truth and justice. Muslim Ummah is described in the Quran as the middle nation. We should avoid extremes of all kinds, and we should be building bridges. We have to stand forth as witnesses on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for truth and justice in the world. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ. We have to be fair and just in our judgment. And we are told to be just even if it hurtful to our own interests, even if it endangers our own interests, the interests of our kith and kin, our parents and spouses and relatives and children. Very openly, Quran declares that. And that is the mandate for us. We need to stand for truth and justice. Not just when it hurts Muslims. Everywhere there is oppression and injustice committed against anyone, we should be there to stand up, align with all those who are for justice and truth in the world. So this is the first strategy. And the next thing is we need to have the spiritual, ideal always in front of us. وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ. The good and bad cannot be alike, cannot be equal. Counter evil with that which is best. So, of course, this should not lead us to remain silent, because the first ayah wants us to be affirmative, to take affirmative action. And affirmative action is to use all of the resources, legal, peaceful avenues open to us, put our resources, develop institutions that would stand for Muslims, train lawyers, train social scientists, train writers, train media people, so that they will narrate, they will stand for us, they will narrate our story for us. Instead of others narrating our story, we should be assertive, we should be affirmative, we should stand. And where there is, the Prophet of Allah said, if any of you see an injustice, a wrong done, try to correct it by using means available to you, affirmative action, legal action, whatever is available to you. If you cannot do so, use the power of the word. the spoken and the written, the music, the art, expression, articulation. And today there are various methods, media. We must use them effectively, and we should develop our own media as well. So the next thing is, Islam requires from Muslims to stand for values. Islam is all for compassion in the world. Islam is all for virtue. And we need to stand, cooperate with anyone for the right cause. The Prophet of Allah said, I was a participant, a partner to a pact of virtue in Jahiliyyah times. The pact was, where there is an injustice, we will stand with the oppressed, with the victim, until justice is done, given. Justice is, his right is restored. The right of the victim is restored. And the Prophet of Mercy said, if I were called to a similar project in Islam, I would rush to join it, no matter who calls me for it, no matter who takes that initiative. So this is the mandate for Muslims. And we need to work for compassion in the world, because in Islam, the acts of compassion and charity cannot be removed, cannot be detached from piety. Husnul khuluq, good morals, and compassion are integral to piety, to God consciousness. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the one who does not encourage, standing for the oppressed and restoring justice and feeding the poor and the hungry, and cannot exhort people to be charitable, he is the one who falsifies religion, because he has a fake religion. That is not the true religion. And then, of course, the ideal practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while we must use all of this, including using our political representatives, the provincial and the federal, to stand, not only for the rights of Muslims who are denied the rights, but also for the rights of everyone, against racism, against bigotry, against xenophobia, all kinds of injustice in the society. We should be there to give this message, powerful message, to our representatives, and make sure that they stand up for us, they stand up for truth, they stand up for justice. And then, of course, the spiritual ideal must always be in front of our eyes. And of course, this is part of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran. Qul i'malu, act. Let Allah and His Messenger see your performance, your action. What kind of an impact you are making, your works are doing in the society. What is the effect of your charitable work? How your project to remove poverty and homelessness and unemployment, how it is bearing fruits in the society. How you are making a difference in the society, in the community you are living, in the neighborhood you are living, and with the neighbors you are. The Prophet of Allah extended always that, charitable action with all of his neighbors. And even said, the circle extends to the 40 houses. And he said, start with that sharing, the festive, the meal on the festive occasion, or even ordinary times. Try and see if anybody in the neighborhood is starving. Take that action. And finally, and most importantly, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ. Try, evil should be countered by that which is best. The Prophet of Allah demonstrated the success of this tip. The Prophet stood up in Arabia, in Makkah, the whole of Makkah, the whole of Arabia against him. They fought him, they drove him out, they persecuted, they lynched his followers, they waged wars and organized people, other people against him to try to destroy the Muslim community. But the Messenger of Mercy, within 23 years, hundreds of his enemies became the believers, supporters, the bosom friends. Even as they had fought years against Islam and the Prophet, they became the foreigners, the defenders of Islam, ready to die for fighting for the cause of Islam. In Hajjatul Wada, 100,000, more than 100,000 companions were with him. Most of them were enemies of Islam, but the Prophet of Mercy turned them into his friends and supporters. And we must use this by narrating our story. As Ibn Rushd, the Muslim philosopher, said, ignorance leads to fear, and fear leads to hatred and violence. Ignorance leads to fear, and fear leads to hatred. Hatred leads to violence. So we need to understand this and be persuasive. Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal ma'ulat al hasana. Call people to the way of your Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching. Beautiful words spoken, written, and beautiful mannerism, good morals, good ethics, standing for truth and justice in the world. That is the formula, that is the way to counter Islamophobia and racism. We have a message and we must stand, live by it, and act upon it and die for it, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم.